What would you do if your own stepsister was the one to betray you with your husband and then asked for your blessing at their wedding? It started with a dream marriage, Mark and I, together for 12 years. We laughed, loved, and built a life that felt unbreakable. But over time, things changed. I started noticing Mark's distance, late-night phone calls, and secretive messages. I suspected an affair, but nothing could have prepared me for what I discovered one night Mark was meeting my stepsister Jessica in a bar. My heart shattered as I realized they were not just friends, but something more. What happens next? Watch the drama unfold and find out how I confronted their betrayal. Don't forget to subscribe for more updates on this story. My husband, Mark M., 52, and I, female 48, had been together for almost 12 years, married for 10. In the beginning, life felt like a dream. Every moment with him was a piece of joy, filling our days with laughter, love, and those small, beautiful moments that deepened our connection. We were a team, taking on life together. Our smiles were contagious, and everything seemed better when we were side by side. Anniversary after anniversary, we cherished the love we had, cozy Sundays, spontaneous date nights, and an unshakable bond. Life felt simple, and we savored every second. But then, something shifted. It happened slowly at first, so gradually that I didn't realize it was happening until it was too late. Our date nights grew strained, and the laughter that once filled our home became a rare sound. I noticed how Mark started spending more time on his phone, his attention drifting away from me. The carefree ease of our relationship faded, replaced by an uncomfortable tension. It was as if our connection, once so solid, was slowly slipping away, like sand through my fingers. I began to suspect that Mark was having an affair. The late-night phone calls and the strange, mysterious messages were happening far too often to ignore. His behavior shifted, and even when we were close, I could feel an emotional distance growing. I confronted him, but he dismissed my concerns, assuring me that I was overreacting, that work was just stressful. But deep down, I knew it wasn't just my imagination. Our marriage was unraveling, and I couldn't stop it. One Friday evening, I decided to surprise Mark with a dinner date, hoping to rekindle the spark. I went to his office to pick him up, envisioning a night of reconnection. But when I received a message from him saying he'd be working late, my heart sank. I didn't confront him, but quietly accepted his excuse, waiting in my car for him to finish. Just as I was about to leave, I saw Mark walking out of the building. The timing didn't add up. His overwhelming workload didn't seem to be the reason he was leaving. Confused and curious, I followed him. What I witnessed next shattered me. Mark pulled into a bar, and I watched, confused and uneasy. Why was he here? Why was he lying to me? I discreetly kept an eye on him, trying to make sense of what was happening. Then, my worst fears were confirmed. He was meeting a woman. My heart dropped as I watched them interact. The woman's back seemed oddly familiar, and when she turned to face him, my stomach dropped further. It was my stepsister, Jessica. The world seemed to stop as I watched them together, their hands intertwined, their smiles warm and genuine. The reality of the betrayal hit me like a crushing blow. The disgust, the hurt, and the overwhelming sense of betrayal left me reeling. My legs nearly gave way as I fought to hold back the tears. I left the bar in a daze, making sure Mark didn't see me. That night, I experienced a pain I never thought possible. It was the deepest sorrow I'd felt since losing my dog the previous year. The agony of knowing that the man I trusted with my life had been lying to me, and worse, that he was cheating on me with my own stepsister was unbearable. This version adds more emotional depth and creates a vivid picture of the pain and confusion the character feels. It aims to keep the core of the story intact while enhancing the reader's emotional connection to the narrative. Just for some context regarding my stepsister, my parents split when I was very little, and my mom married her new husband, David. David had a daughter from his previous marriage called Jessica. At first, Jessica and I used to get along well despite our 4-year age gap. However, our relationship started to wane when I slowly discovered her knack for manipulation. She proved to be a master of deceit, effortlessly turning any situation to her advantage, whether it was lying to our parents to avoid punishments or deceiving complete strangers without a second thought. Jessica's manipulative skills knew no bounds. For some reason, Jessica was always jealous of me, even though we both came from broken homes. No matter how hard I tried, I could never get her to like me. As we grew up and eventually went to college, I saw less and less of her. I had secured a full-ride scholarship for college and relished my college days, making new friends, exploring different classes, and savoring the freedom of youth. I started coming back home less and less, and eventually I stopped talking to Jessica except at family events. Even though I kept my distance from Jessica, she continued to be nasty to me over the years. She would make subtle yet hurtful comments about my appearance whenever we were alone during the events, whether it was a remark on my choice of clothing or a sly comment about how I should consider hitting the gym more often. Her words were targeted to chip away at my confidence. I would always try my best to ignore these comments as much as possible. Jessica didn't just stop there. She would often act overly friendly with my husband, who was then my boyfriend. She would make remarks to him like how he deserved someone better looking or how hot his gym pictures were. I remember Mark would get visibly uncomfortable back then and blush at her compliments. I always chalked it up to Jessica being Jessica. She had always been this inappropriate with everyone I dated and introduced to my family. Since my marriage to my husband, she had toned down her flirtatious behavior, and I never thought much about it anyway. But after discovering them both together tonight in the pub, I was sure that this had been going on for a while. They looked cozy and comfortable with each other. When Mark returned that night, I pretended to be asleep. He reeked of whiskey and sweat and didn't even bother hiding it. His brazen attitude hinted at his growing arrogance, where he had started to think that he could just get away with something like this. I stayed awake the entire night, thinking of my next steps. In the morning, before Mark could wake up, I slyly took his phone out of our bedroom so I could go through it. Going through his messages, calls, emails, and pictures, I diligently documented evidence by taking photos on my own phone. That morning, after Mark left for work, I decided to drive to my mom's place because I knew she was the only one who could comfort me. My stepdad was at work, so I knew I could talk to my mom in privacy. When I told my mom about my husband's affair with my stepsister, she was just as shocked as me. She almost didn't believe me until I pulled up all the evidence. She was beyond outraged that Mark and Jessica could do such a despicable thing. My mom, being the rock she is, immediately made plans to confront them in front of everyone. I could understand how enraged my mother was, given that she had always treated Jessica like her own daughter while we were growing up. We just couldn't understand how my very own stepsister could stab me in the back this way. We hatched a plan to call our close family members for dinner during the weekend at my place. My mom asked me to keep my mouth shut and not let Mark know anything about this. On the day of my party, everyone arrived, looking fresh and happy. We all had dinner together, and then, as people were sipping wine, I looked at my mom and nodded, signaling that it was time. She understood and stood up to get the projector. I clinked my glass to get everyone's attention. "Thank you all for joining us tonight," I began, my voice steady despite the storm of emotions within me. "I've called you all here for a special reason, something I've been grappling with for a while. I want you to pay attention to the projector, as I have a surprise for you." Curiosity filled the room as my family and friends turned their attention towards the projector screen. My mom had set up this device, and I took a deep breath, ready to unveil the painful truth. I connected it to my phone and began scrolling through the images and messages I had collected from my husband's phone. The room fell into a hushed silence as everyone stared at the projector. The first image appeared on the screen, a picture of Mark and Jessica in an intimate pose. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the room. Everyone looked at it, seemingly confused. "This is not easy for me, but I felt you all needed to know the truth," I continued, my voice unwavering. "These pictures and messages are evidence of an affair between my husband, Mark, and my stepsister, Jessica." The room erupted into disbelief, anger, and shock. Eyes widened and jaws dropped as the evidence unfolded before them. My mom's face reflected a mix of fury and sorrow, and I could feel the tension escalating. She stood beside me, holding my hand, letting me know silently that she had my back. I continued scrolling through the damning messages, exposing the depth of the betrayal. The more I revealed, the more everyone's shock turned into palpable anger. I turned to face Mark and Jessica, who were sitting in stunned silence. Mark's face flushed with guilt, and Jessica, once manipulative and cunning, looked small and exposed. The room seemed to vibrate with the collective anger of those present. My mom stepped forward, her voice sharp and filled with disappointment. "How could you do this to our family, to your spouse, your sister?" she demanded, her eyes boring into Mark and Jessica. My stepdad looked straight at Jessica and asked her if what I had shown was true. Jessica burst out crying, hearing the depth of his words. Other family members began expressing their own disbelief and outrage. Some exchanged glances, shaking their heads, while others whispered angry comments to one another. Mark and Jessica, cornered by the damning evidence and the furious reactions around them, sat there, unable to find words to defend their actions. The room was thick with the weight of truth, and while my heart felt heavy, there was a strange, almost liberating sense of relief. The secret was out, and the deception laid bare for all to see. I stood up once again, addressing the room. "I didn't invite all of you here just to expose them, but to let you know that I will be divorcing Mark. If Jessica wants my husband, then she can have him. I appreciate your understanding and support during this difficult time." As the shock settled, solidarity began to form around me. Friends and family offered comforting words and condemnation directed at Mark and Jessica. Mark's face flushed red, and he quickly left the room in humiliation. Jessica hurried behind him, clearly looking for any excuse to escape. My mom wrapped her arms around me, and I started to cry. I had kept this pain hidden for so long, but now it came rushing out all at once. In the months that followed, I felt completely drained. Emotionally, I was a shell of the person I once was, too exhausted to even get out of bed. The weight of the betrayal, compounded by the tears I had shed, left me hollow. Sleep had become my refuge, an escape from the painful reality. I kicked Mark out as we started the divorce process. It was a long and difficult road, but I was determined to finalize it as quickly as possible. Just 2 days ago, after months of legal proceedings, the court officially granted our separation. I was overjoyed, and I spent the day with my mom, shopping and indulging in ice cream. For the first time in ages, I felt a sense of freedom, of liberation. That evening, as we sat together at my mom's house enjoying a movie, my stepdad walked in, clearly upset. My mom asked him what was wrong, but he looked at me with concern. I sat up straight, asking if something had happened. He asked me if I had seen what Jessica had posted on Facebook. I shook my head and pulled out my phone to check her profile. With bated breath, I opened her page to see her latest post, a picture of her with Mark. They were smiling at each other, clearly in love. Her caption read, "So happy to be engaged." My breath hitched as I noticed the ring on her finger. I couldn't believe my eyes. My mom, who had been watching me, snatched the phone from my hand, letting out a cry of disbelief when she realized what it meant. Jessica was actually marrying Mark. I don't even remember the rest of that night. Overwhelmed with shock, I collapsed back onto the couch, my mind spinning in a whirlpool of emotions. The room seemed to close in around me as I tried to process what had just happened. My mom, equally stunned, tried to comfort me, but words were useless. As if the situation wasn't already bad enough, my stepdad received a call from Jessica. She was probably calling to share her engagement news with him. I asked him to put her on speaker so I could hear what she had to say. He nodded and answered the call. I could hear her gushing about how happy she was to be marrying Mark. Listening to her words, I felt my heart shatter. My stepdad, not holding back his anger, snapped, "Jessica, what you did today is not only incredibly insensitive, but has hurt your stepsister deeply. Your actions are going to affect the entire family." Jessica, clearly annoyed, replied, "I don't understand, Dad. Mark and I are in love. We're getting married. Why shouldn't we celebrate that?" My stepdad's voice grew stern as he responded, "What's wrong, Jessica, is the way you've gone about this. You had an affair and now you think it's okay? Your actions have caused so much pain to someone who considered you family, and now you're flaunting your engagement without a care for the consequences." Hearing those words, I broke down again, tears flowing freely as my mom held me. It was in that moment that Jessica must have realized the gravity of the situation. She asked if I was in the room, and my stepdad confirmed that I was. Desperately, Jessica began pleading to speak with me. My stepdad looked at me, then handed me the phone. I asked her, barely holding it together, if she knew what she was getting herself into. A smirk crept onto her face when she heard my voice, and she told me she knew exactly what she was doing. She said, "You shouldn't even be upset because we're already separated. Mark is free to marry me now." But then, she dropped another bombshell. "Mark and I want you to come to our wedding and bless our new journey together." This version enhances the emotional impact and suspense of the original, deepens the emotional turmoil of the protagonist, and highlights the painful realization of betrayal. I felt a mix of shock, anger, and disbelief hearing her words. They expected me to put on a facade of acceptance, to showcase unity and happiness, when in reality I was grappling with the shattered remnants of my own heart. The whole situation felt like a twisted joke on me. She started talking about how it would mean so much to them if I could deliver a speech for their special day, which would indicate to everyone that I was okay with their wedding. Stunned, I found myself at a loss for words. Without hesitation, my mother swiftly took the phone from my hands and addressed Jessica directly. She firmly expressed that Jessica's actions were reprehensible and amounted to a new low. In response, Jessica defiantly argued that she and Mark were in love, insisting that only she could make him happy and demanding that the family should accept their relationship. I left my parents to deal with Jessica as I retreated to the guest bedroom, where I locked myself in and cried. I don't remember much of the night. The next morning, I woke up with a mixture of anger and determination. The audacity of Jessica's actions fueled a fire within me. Instead of letting this revelation shatter me, I decided to turn the tables. I knew I had to face this head-on and come out stronger. I was not going to let them suck away my happiness and mental peace. I had a plan forming in my head and was determined to make Jessica regret ever inviting me. I opened up my laptop and began scrolling through her social media profiles. I scanned each and every social media picture she had ever posted. As luck would have it, I finally found what I was looking for. I called a family meeting where I explained my plan. I would attend Jessica and Mark's engagement party, but not alone. I would be inviting a very special guest to be my +1. Unbeknownst to Mark and Jessica, my mom looked at me curiously as I explained that I would be going with none other than her ex-boyfriend from college, Ron. Ron was supposedly the great love of my stepsister's life, and she even had a tattoo of his name from their dating days. They had had a painful breakup, and I knew for a fact that she would almost die in shock to see me arm in arm with her ex. My mom's eyes widened in realization. I grinned at her mischievously. She gave me a subtle nod of approval to confirm that she understood my plan. My stepdad, on the other hand, thought this might take things too far and advised me not to ruin my sister's wedding. So, Reddit, do you think I'm the a-hole for taking my stepsister's ex to her wedding after she decided to sleep with my husband and marry him? Update 1. It's been a few days since I posted any updates to my story. Thank you all for your comments. I am surprised that a lot of you understand and support my petty actions. I will admit that I did want to be the bigger person initially, but watching Jessica update more and more of her engagement pictures with Mark officially solidified my plan, and I set everything in motion. I sent a friend request to Ron on Facebook, and when he accepted, I sent him a message. To my surprise, he responded and we started talking. I was upfront with him about my identity as Jessica's stepsister and her soon-to-be husband's ex. I told him about my plan to invite him as my +1 to their wedding. He seemed intrigued and curious as to why I was reaching out to him, but I explained everything. I told him about how Jessica had cheated on me with my own husband and was now marrying him. I told him that I wanted to take him with me so that I could make Jessica feel the same way she made me feel. After hearing everything, Ron finally agreed to accompany me. I feel excited thinking of the look on Mark and Jessica's faces when they see me attend their wedding with Ron. My stepdad has no idea that I'll be taking Ron after our last conversation, where he discouraged me from bringing him as my +1 to Jessica's wedding. I'm choosing to keep this information to myself for now. I will update you next when the wedding takes place in a few days. Update 2. It's been a month since my last update. As much as I wanted to update you earlier, a lot has happened in my life, and I needed some time to settle down. As I had mentioned earlier, I did take Ron with me to the wedding. When the day of their marriage arrived, I put on a brave face, clad in an outfit that radiated confidence. I walked into their wedding in the arms of Ron. Mark's eyes widened when he saw me walking in with my special guest. He must have immediately recognized Ron as Jessica's ex. We ignored his expressions and pretended to find our designated seats. Mark came up to me and angrily whispered, asking why I was there with Jessica's ex, but I simply smiled. He could not make a scene in front of everyone and had to begrudgingly walk back up to the aisle, eyeing me angrily. When it was time for the bride to make her entrance, everyone stood up from their seats. Jessica, adorned in her bride's glory, walked in with my stepdad. She spotted me among the guests and flashed a triumphant smile. I returned it with a smirk, refusing to let her see my vulnerability. Then she saw Ron standing next to me and froze in her tracks. The music continued and my stepdad urged her to continue walking, but Jessica refused to move. Her eyes darted between me and him, perhaps still confused. I held my head high, maintaining a composed demeanor. As my stepdad noticed Jessica staring at me, he looked up at me and Ron and must have understood what was going on. The air in the room thickened with tension, and I could practically feel the collective curiosity of the guests intensifying. Jessica stormed toward me and stopped in front of us, her face contorted with a volatile mix of anger and disbelief. "Congratulations, Jessica," I said, my voice steady. "I'm genuinely happy for you both." "What the hell is this?" she spat out, her voice a venomous hiss. I met her gaze without flinching, a sense of satisfaction creeping into my voice. "This, Jessica, is my +1, I said, savoring the moment. "Meet Ron. You remember him, don't you? From your college days? Or should I remind you of the tattoo on your hand?" I watched as disbelief washed over her face. Ron stepped forward, his face unreadable. "Hey, Jessica. It's good to see you after so many years. We thought we'd join in the celebration of your special day," he said calmly, refusing to take the bait and escalate things. Jessica's face turned crimson with rage. "Joy? You call this joy? You're ruining everything!" she shouted, her voice cutting through the hushed crowd. The room fell silent, the tension hanging thick in the air. Guests turned their attention to Jessica, their faces mirroring the shock that rippled through the crowd. Whispers began to swirl, and everyone exchanged stunned glances. I kept my composure, meeting her fury with steady words. "Well, Jessica, you were kind enough to invite me to your wedding with Mark, so I thought it only fair to return the favor and bring along your ex, Ron." The guests buzzed with murmurs and gasps as they processed the unfolding drama. Her eyes narrowed, her surprise evident. She hadn't expected such a bold response. Ron, maintaining his calm, added, "Jessica, we're just here to celebrate your happiness. No need to make this a scene." "Celebrate my happiness?" Jessica scoffed. "How could you even be with someone like her? Are you dating her now?" I let a small smile creep onto my lips, shrugging nonchalantly. "As I said, you invited me. I'm just here to honor that invitation and wish you and Mark a lifetime of happiness. What happens between Ron and me is none of your concern, especially when you're about to get married." The room's tension spiked as Jessica's anger festered. Mark, still standing at the altar, hurried down, trying to calm her so the ceremony could resume. She shoved him aside, her fury unabated. In a fit of rage, Jessica hurled her bouquet across the room, petals scattering in its wake before it crashed to the floor. Ignoring the gasps from the crowd, Jessica stormed out, her gown trailing behind her like a whirlwind of white. The door slammed shut, leaving an air of disbelief hanging over the guests. Some tried to force awkward smiles, while others fidgeted uncomfortably in their seats. The joyous atmosphere had dissolved into a heavy cloud of confusion and tension. Mark glared at me, opening his mouth to yell, but my mom's firm voice cut through, telling him to keep quiet after everything he had put me through. With a smirk, I whispered to Ron that we should leave, and he nodded in agreement. The room erupted in reactions, shock, anger, and whispered exchanges. I walked out of the venue with my head held high. The weight of betrayal had lifted. The world had witnessed my pain, my resilience, and my ability to rise above the ruins of a broken marriage. I didn't care if people thought I went too far because I never slept with someone behind their back or ruined anyone's marriage. All I did was give my stepsister a taste of her own medicine. Update 3. I'm still stunned by the reactions to what I did, but I'm grateful that most of you understand my reasons. I also acknowledge the negative responses, but honestly, I don't regret a thing. I've heard from my stepdad that Mark and Jessica are officially done. She refused to go through with the wedding, no matter how much Mark begged. Looks like she still has feelings for Ron, and seeing him there reminded her of what she lost. I'm not one to enjoy others' pain, but sometimes consequences are the only lessons people understand. Mark has been calling me angrily, leaving messages, but I've blocked him. My stepdad has reprimanded me for what I did at the wedding, but out of respect, I didn't argue much. My mom asked me to give him time and space, and I agreed. For now, I'm focusing on rebuilding my life and finding happiness within myself. I'm going to start therapy, as many of you have suggested, to help me navigate this uncertain time. My focus will be on personal growth, rediscovering my passions, and surrounding myself with positive influences. This rewrite improves the flow and emotional depth, with added descriptions that capture the intensity of the moment and enhance the narrative's tension. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where your emotions pushed you to do something you never thought you would? Something that, in the moment, felt right but left you questioning the consequences later? That was exactly how I felt when I made the decision to confront Jessica and Mark at their engagement party. I had just witnessed the ultimate betrayal, a betrayal that shook me to my core. The pain of finding out that my husband was cheating on me with my own stepsister Jessica was unbearable. But the decision to turn the tables and bring Ron, Jessica's ex, to their wedding wasn't just about revenge, it was about reclaiming my sense of power and dignity. The sense of betrayal was still raw, but in that moment, I needed to remind myself that I had a voice, and I wouldn't let them control the narrative any longer. As Jessica's face morphed from smug confidence to utter shock, I could feel a surge of empowerment. The laughter, the whispers, the stunned expressions from the crowd, they were all reminders that I wasn't just a victim here. But still, the question lingered in my mind. Was I justified in doing what I did? Was I justified in taking the low road to make them feel even an ounce of the pain I had endured? The reality is, sometimes it feels good to stand up for yourself, to force the people who've wronged you to see the damage they've caused. But what about the aftermath? What happens when the excitement of seeing them squirm fades away, and you're left with the question of whether your actions were worth it? Have you ever found yourself wondering if the satisfaction of a moment like that was truly worth the emotional cost? Or perhaps you've experienced a moment where you've chosen to fight back, but now you're not sure how to move forward? Let me know what you think. And don't forget to subscribe for more updates on my journey of healing and self-discovery.